When I hit a $3 million 0 cents jackpot in the state lottery, my parents demanded I split it with their golden child, my sister. I stood my ground and said no. The next day, I walked in to find them torching what they thought was my winning check, sneering, "If you won't share, you're getting nothing." I couldn't stop laughing. The check they burned was just a ceremonial prop, worthless, while the real money was already safe in my account. The rain was relentless, hammering the streets of Seattle like it had a personal vendetta against the city. I hunched under my umbrella, dodging puddles outside the Rusty Anchor, a dive bar in Capitol Hill, where the beer was cheap and the crowd didn't ask questions. It was a Friday night, and I was 3 whiskeys deep, laughing with my best friend Sophie over a stupid bet we'd made after one too many rounds. "Eliza Harper," she'd slurred, pointing a wobbly finger at me, "I bet you $20 you won't buy a lottery ticket right now. You're too practical for that nonsense." I'd laughed, my cheeks warm from the booze, and stumbled to the bar's ancient lottery machine. $5 later, I had a ticket in my pocket, a single line of numbers that would change my life forever. I'm not the kind of person who believes in luck. At 34, I'd clawed my way through a cybersecurity analyst job at a mid-tier tech firm, juggling $85,000, 0 cents in student loans, and a studio apartment so small I could touch both walls without stretching. My life was a treadmill of bills, deadlines, and the occasional Netflix binge when I could afford to stay awake past 10 p.m. But that night, something reckless sparked in me. Maybe it was the whiskey, or Sophie's dare, or the weight of a decade spent scraping by. Whatever it was, I tucked that ticket into my wallet and forgot about it, assuming it'd be another $5 down the drain. 2 days later, I was nursing a hangover and a microwave burrito when the local news flashed the winning numbers. I barely paid attention, half asleep on my lumpy couch, until the announcer's voice cut through my haze. "Jackpot of $3 million, folks! Here are the numbers!" I froze, burrito halfway to my mouth, as the numbers rolled across the screen. July 14th, 23, 28, 41, 56. My heart stuttered. I fumbled for my wallet, hands shaking so badly I dropped my phone twice. There, on that crumpled ticket, were the exact same numbers. I checked again, then a third time, convinced I was hallucinating. But no, it was real. I, Eliza Harper, had just won $3 million. The room spun. I sat there, staring at the ticket, my pulse hammering in my ears. $3 million. After taxes, the lump sum would be about $1,800,000, 0 cents, the lottery website said when I frantically Googled it. That was enough to pay off my loans, buy a house, maybe even quit my soul-sucking job. For the first time in my life, I could breathe. But as the shock wore off, a cold dread crept in. I grew up in a family where money was a weapon, and I knew this win wouldn't just change my life. It'd unleash a storm I wasn't ready for. Let me take you back to where it all began, because to understand why this win felt like both a blessing and a curse, you need to know about my family. I grew up in a working-class suburb of Portland, Oregon, in a split-level house with peeling paint and a lawn my dad, Richard, mowed religiously every Saturday. From the outside, we were the picture of middle American normalcy. 2 parents, 2 daughters, a dog named Rusty who chewed through every pair of shoes I owned, but inside, it was a different story. My younger sister, Clara, was born when I was 6, and from the moment she arrived, she was the sun my parents orbited around. Clara was their golden child, the one who could do no wrong. Her dimpled smile and curly blonde hair won hearts effortlessly, and my parents, Richard and Diane, poured everything into her. When Clara wanted ballet lessons at 8, they found the money, even though we were eating canned soup for dinner most nights. When she decided at 16 that she needed a professional headshot for her modeling career, They maxed out a credit card to pay for it. Me? I was the afterthought, the practical one who didn't need coddling. When I begged for a graphing calculator for AP Calculus, Dad told me to figure it out. So I did, working double shifts at a greasy diner smelling like fryer oil every night to afford it. It wasn't that my parents were cruel. They fed me, clothed me, showed up to my high school graduation with a half-hearted "good job, Eliza." But their attention was a finite resource, and Clara consumed it all. Her mediocre watercolor paintings were framed and hung in the living room. My straight-A report cards got a nod and a, "That's nice, but did you see Clara's new dance routine?" By the time I was in college, I'd learned to stop expecting anything else. I worked 2 jobs, kept my scholarship, and graduated with a computer science degree and $85,000 0 cents in debt. Clara, meanwhile, flitted through 3 majors, dropped out to find herself, and was bankrolled by my parents through every whim. Vlogging, yoga instructing, an Etsy shop selling overpriced candles. Each time they'd say, "She's just passionate, Eliza, you wouldn't understand." Now, at 34, I'd built a life I was proud of, even if it was modest. My Seattle studio was cramped, with a leaky faucet and neighbors who argued at 2 a.m., but it was mine. My job at TechWave Solutions wasn't glamorous, endless firewall audits and phishing scam reports. But it paid the bills, barely. I'd learned to savor small victories, a rare night out with Sophie, a new pair of boots on sale, a month where I didn't have to dip into savings to cover rent, but that lottery ticket? It was a grenade, and I knew my family would light the fuse the second they found out. The morning after the news broadcast, I called in sick to work, my voice shaky as I lied about a stomach bug. I couldn't focus on anything but the ticket, now sealed in a Ziploc bag and hidden inside my dog-eared copy of Neuromancer on my bookshelf. I called Sophie, my voice barely above a whisper. "You need to get over here, now, I'm not joking." She arrived in 20 minutes, her dark hair still damp from a shower. Worry etched across her face. "Eliza, what's wrong? Are you hurt?" I didn't answer. I just handed her the ticket and pointed to the numbers I'd scribbled on a post-it from the broadcast. Her eyes widened, darting between the ticket and my face. "Holy shit," she whispered. "Is this real?" I nodded, my throat tight. I checked the numbers 10 times. "It's real." She grabbed her phone, pulled up the lottery website, and compared the numbers again. "Eliza, you're a millionaire. You just won $3 million. We sat in stunned silence, the weight of it sinking in. Sophie, ever the optimist, started rattling off possibilities. Paying off my loans, traveling to Iceland, buying a house with an actual backyard. But my mind was elsewhere, replaying every family dinner where Clara's needs trumped mine, every time my parents dismissed my struggles with a wave of their hand. "You can't tell anyone yet," I said, my voice sharp. "Not until I figure out what to do." Sophie nodded, sensing the fear behind my words. "Your family's gonna lose it when they hear." She wasn't wrong. But I had no idea how far they'd go. The Washington State Lottery office was a nondescript building in Olympia, an hour's drive from Seattle. I went the next day, Sophie behind the wheel because my hands wouldn't stop trembling. The ticket was in my purse, zipped into an inner pocket, and I checked it obsessively every 5 minutes. The drive was quiet, the radio humming low as rain streaked the windshield. I kept glancing in the side mirror, half convinced someone was following us. Paranoia, I told myself. Just nerves. But as we pulled into a gas station halfway there, I noticed a figure lingering near the pumps, face obscured by a hoodie. When I stepped out to grab a coffee, he moved closer, his pace quickening. My heart lurched. "Sophie, get back in the car," I hissed, clutching my purse. He was 10 feet away now, hands in his pockets, eyes locked on me. I bolted for the car, but he lunged, grabbing for my purse strap. I screamed, yanking it back, and sprinted into the gas station's crowded cafe, shoving through a line of truckers. The cashier, a burly guy with a Seahawks cap, shouted, "Hey, back off!" The figure hesitated, then vanished into the rain. I collapsed into a booth, gasping as Sophie ran in. "What the hell was that?" she demanded. "I don't know," I said, my voice shaking. "He went for my purse. The ticket's in there. We checked it. Still safe, thank God." But my hands wouldn't stop trembling. Was it random? Or did someone know? The thought made my stomach churn. I'd only told Sophie, but secrets like this had a way of slipping out. At the lottery office, a stern woman named Miss Caldwell verified the ticket, her glasses slipping down her nose as she typed. "Congratulations, Miss Harper," she said, her tone professional but warm. "You've won $3 million. After federal and state taxes, the lump sum payment will be approximately $1,800,000, 0 cents. Or you can choose an annuity over 20 years. I opted for the lump sum, desperate to clear my debts and start fresh. She handed me a folder of paperwork and a ceremonial check for photos, a giant cartoonish prop with my name in bold letters. "The real funds will transfer electronically in about 2 weeks," she explained. "Until then, keep this quiet. Winners attract all sorts, friends, family, even strangers. Be careful who you trust." Her words echoed in my head as we drove back to Seattle. Family. I wanted to believe my parents would be happy for me, that Clara might set aside her entitlement for once, but deep down, I knew better. Still, I couldn't keep it from them forever. They were my family, flawed as they were, and part of me, a naive, hopeful part, wanted to share this moment. So I decided to tell them at Thanksgiving, a week away, during our annual dinner at their Portland house. It was a tradition I dreaded, all forced smiles and Clara's stealing the spotlight. But it felt like the right time. What I didn't expect was how quickly that dinner would spiral into chaos. Thanksgiving morning, I woke to a gray Seattle sky, the city draped in fog. My studio smelled faintly of burnt coffee from a pot I'd forgotten to turn off. I stood at my tiny kitchen counter, rehearsing how I'd break the news. "Mom, Dad, Clara, I won the lottery, $3 million. Simple, direct. But my stomach nodded at the thought of their reactions. Clara's eyes would light up, not with joy but with calculation. My parents would start talking about family responsibility before I could finish my sentence. I pushed the thought away, pulling on a sweater and jeans, determined to stay optimistic. The drive to Portland was a blur of wet highways and classic rock on the radio. Sophie had offered to come, but I declined, needing to face this alone. My parents' house hadn't changed in years. Same faded blue siding, same creaky porch swing, same mailbox with Harper stenciled in Diane's neat handwriting. I parked behind Clara's shiny new SUV, a gift from my parents despite her career as an influencer netting less than my diner tips. Used to. Deep breath, Eliza. You've got this. Inside, the house smelled of roasted turkey and Diane's overpowering lavender candles. Mom was in the kitchen, apron tied tight, chopping carrots with surgical precision. Dad lounged in his recliner, a football game blaring, while Clara scrolled her phone on the couch, her manicured nails tapping the screen. "Eliza, you're early," Mom said, her smile tight. "Help me with the potatoes," I nodded, falling into the familiar rhythm of peeling and mashing, my nerves jangling like loose change. Dinner was served at 6, the dining room table groaning under platters of turkey, stuffing, and green bean casserole. Clara, fashionably late, swept in wearing a designer sweater I knew she couldn't afford, her blonde curls bouncing. "Sorry, traffic was brutal," she lied, kissing Mom's cheek. We sat, Dad carving the turkey with exaggerated ceremony, and made small talk about the weather, my job, Clara's latest Instagram sponsorship? A $200 0-cent deal for some organic tea she'd never drink. I waited, picking at my plate, until the conversation lulled. "I have some news," I said, my voice louder than I intended. All eyes turned to me, forks pausing mid-air. My heart pounded, but I pressed on. "Last week, I won the lottery. $3 million. Silence. Then Mom gasped, her hand flying to her chest. Dad's fork clattered to his plate. Clara's eyes narrowed, her lips parting slightly. "You're joking," Dad said, his voice gruff. "No joke," I replied, forcing a smile. "I verified it with the lottery commission. It's real." For a split second, I thought they'd celebrate. Mom stood, arms outstretched, and hugged me, her lavender perfume overwhelming. "Eliza, that's incredible!" she exclaimed. Dad nodded, a rare grin breaking through his usual scowl. "Hell of a thing, kid." But Clara stayed silent, her gaze flicking between me and her plate. Then, like a switch flipping, the mood shifted. $3 million, Clara said, her voice syrupy sweet but edged with something darker. "That's life-changing, Eliza, for all of us." My stomach dropped. "What do you mean, all of us?" I asked, already knowing the answer. Mom jumped in, her tone coaxing. "Well, sweetheart, this is a family blessing. We could all benefit. Clara's been struggling with her brand, you know that." Struggling? Clara's brand was a string of failed ventures, vlogging about vegan recipes she didn't cook, modeling gigs that never materialized, an online store selling bohemian scarves that tanked in 3 months. She was $50,000, 0 cents in debt, according to Mom's worried phone calls, but somehow always had money for $200, 0 cents highlights. "I haven't decided what to do with it yet," I said carefully. "It's still processing, and I need to talk to a financial advisor." "What's to decide?" Dad cut in, his voice hardening. "Your sister's drowning in debt. You've got millions. Family helps family." I stared at him, the old resentment bubbling up. "Family helps family?" I repeated, my voice sharp. "Where was that when I was working 60 hours a week to pay for college? When I needed a car to get to my internship and you told me to take the bus?" Mom flinched, but Dad's jaw tightened. "Don't get dramatic, Eliza. Clara's got real potential. Her brand just needs a push." "A push?" I snapped. "She's had a push every year since she was 10. Ballet, modeling, that yoga retreat in Bali she blew Grandma's inheritance on. What about my potential? I've been paying off loans for a decade while you bankrolled her failures." The room went still. Clara's face crumpled, her eyes welling with practiced tears. "Wow, Eliza," she whispered. "I didn't know you hated me that much." "I don't hate you," I said, my voice shaking. "But this is my win, my chance, and you're already making it about you." Mom reached for my hand, but I pulled away. "Eliza, don't be selfish. We're just asking you to think of the family." Selfish. The word hit like a slap, echoing every time they dismissed my needs. I stood, my chair scraping the floor. "I need some air," I muttered, grabbing my coat and bolting for the door. Outside, the Portland air was sharp, the streetlights casting long shadows on the wet pavement. I leaned against my car, breath fogging in the cold, trying to calm the storm in my chest. I dreamed of this moment, telling my family, seeing pride in their eyes. Instead, I got demands, guilt trips, and Clara's crocodile tears. My phone buzzed in my pocket, a text from Sophie. "How'd it go?" I typed back. "Disaster. Call you later." As I slid my phone away, I heard the front door open. Dad stood on the porch, his silhouette looming. "Get back inside, Eliza," he called, his voice low and commanding. "We're not done talking." I shook my head, unlocking my car. "I'm done for tonight." He took a step forward, his face half lit by the porch light. "You walk away now. You're walking away from this family. Think about that." The threat hung in the air, heavy as the rain. I climbed into my car, slammed the door, and drove off, my hands gripping the wheels so tight my knuckles ached. In the rearview mirror, I saw him watching me, unmoving, until the darkness swallowed him. Back in Seattle, I couldn't sleep. My studio felt smaller, the walls closing in as I replayed the dinner. Clara's calculating stare, Mom's disappointed sigh, Dad's ultimatum. I poured a glass of cheap Merlot and called Sophie, spilling everything. "They didn't even ask how I felt," I said, my voice breaking. "Not one question about what this means for me. It was all about Clara's stupid brand." Sophie listened, her voice steady through the phone. "I'm not surprised, but I'm pissed for you. What are you gonna do?" "I don't know," I admitted. "Pay off my loans, maybe get a better place. But I need to set boundaries, right? They're acting like it's their money." Sophie snorted. "Boundaries? With your family? Good luck. They're gonna keep coming until you shut it down hard." She was right, but I wasn't ready for how hard they'd push, or how dangerous it would get. The next morning, my phone woke me at 6:45. "Aye, Mom." Mom's name flashed on the screen. I groaned, tempted to ignore it, but answered anyway. "Eliza, I've been up all night thinking," she started. No hello, no apology. "You were overwhelmed last night, I get it, but you need to see how important this is for Clara. Her brand could take off with the right investment." I pinched the bridge of my nose, a headache blooming. "Mom, it's not even 7. I'm not talking about this now." "There's nothing to talk about," she pressed. "This is what families do. We support each other. Clara's in a hole and you're holding the ladder." The metaphor was so absurd I almost laughed. "I need to get to work," I said, ending the call before she could argue. I silenced my phone, but not before 3 more calls came in, 2 from Dad, 1 from Clara. Her text followed. "Hey sis, I know you're freaking out, but I'm not asking for much, just $100, 0 cents K, to clear my debts and get my brand rolling. Love you." The emoji felt like a slap. I deleted it without replying. At work, I tried to focus, but my inbox was a blur of code alerts and meeting invites. I met with my boss, Priya, during lunch, requesting a few days off for personal reasons. She raised an eyebrow but didn't pry. "Take care of yourself, Eliza," she said. "You look like you haven't slept." I hadn't, and it showed. On my break, I checked my phone. 5 missed calls, a voicemail from Dad, his voice cold. "Eliza, your mother's a wreck because of you. We raised you better than this. Call us back so we can sort out Clara's situation." I deleted it, my jaw tight. Sort out Clara's situation? Not mine. Never mine. That afternoon, I met Laura Bennett, a financial advisor recommended by the Lottery Commission. Her office was all glass and steel, overlooking Puget Sound, a stark contrast to my cluttered life. She was in her 50s, sharp-aimed and no nonsense, her gray blazer crisp as her advice. "First, congratulations," she said, sliding a notepad across her desk. "Second, let's talk reality. After taxes, you're looking at $1,800,000, 0 cents. Life-changing, but not infinite. Pay off high-interest debts first, those student loans. Set up an emergency fund, then diversify investments, and most importantly, protect yourself." "Protect myself?" I asked, though I already knew what she meant. She leaned forward, her gaze steady. "Sudden wealth brings out the worst in people. Family, friends, strangers. They'll all want a piece. Set clear boundaries now, or you'll be fighting them off for years." I told her about Thanksgiving, about Clara's demands and my parents' pressure. Her frown deepened. "That's textbook. Don't give in to guilt. Any money you share should be on your terms, documented and final. Otherwise, they'll keep coming back." I left her office with a plan. pay off my loans, save for a house, invest the rest, and a growing resolve to stand my ground. But that resolve was tested sooner than I expected. That night, I pulled into my apartment's parking lot, the rain finally easing. As I locked my car, I noticed something off. The driver's side door was scratched, deep gouges spelling out share or else. My breath caught. I spun around, scanning the lot, but it was empty, the streetlights buzzing faintly. My hands shook as I snapped photos and called the police. A tired officer arrived an hour later, jotting notes with little interest. "Probably kids," he said. "File a report, but don't expect much." I didn't tell him about the lottery. How could I? But I knew this wasn't random. Someone knew, and they were watching. The next few days were a blur of paranoia and pressure. My family's calls didn't stop. Mom's voicemails alternated between pleading and scolding. Dad's grew sharper, one ending with, "You'll regret turning your back on us, Eliza." Clara's texts were a masterclass in manipulation. "I can't believe you'd let me lose everything when you have so much. I thought we were sisters." I stopped responding, but each message chipped away at my resolve. At work, I was distracted, jumping every time my phone buzzed. Then Clara upped the ante. I was in a team meeting, presenting a firewall update, when my coworker Jake whispered, "Eliza, your sister's here." I froze, mid-slide, as Priya gestured toward the conference room door. There was Clara, in a dramatic trench coat, mascara smudged like she'd been crying. "Eliza, I need to talk to you," she said, loud enough for the whole room to hear. My face burned as Priya cleared her throat. "Can this wait?" she asked. Clara ignored her, stepping inside. "It's about family, Eliza. I just need $100,000, 0 cents, to save my career. You won't even miss it." The room went silent, every eye on me. I stood, my voice low but firm. "Clara, leave. Now." She hesitated, then burst into tears, a performance worthy of an Oscar. "You're breaking my heart," she sobbed, rushing out. Jake stared at his laptop, pretending not to notice, but the damage was done. Rumors spread like wildfire. By lunch, half the office was whispering about my lottery millions. I wanted to disappear. That evening, I got a group text from Mom, including Dad and Clara. "We're meeting tomorrow at 7 p.m. to discuss the family trust now that Eliza's been blessed. Bring your lottery paperwork so we can plan." The audacity floored me. A family trust? They hadn't even asked if I was okay, let alone consulted me. I replied, "I'm not coming. My money, my decisions." Dad's response was immediate, a voicemail so venomous, I nearly dropped my phone. "This is unacceptable, Eliza. After everything we've done, you're spitting in our faces. I'm ashamed to call you my daughter." I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I researched lottery horror stories. Winners stalked, sued, even killed over their fortunes. I changed my phone number, deleted my social media, and ordered a security system for my apartment. But the fear lingered, a constant hum in my chest. And then, it got worse. It was a Tuesday, 5 days after Thanksgiving, when I came home from work to find my apartment door ajar. My heart stopped. I'd locked it that morning. I was sure of it. I pushed the door open, my phone clutched to call 911 and stepped inside. The place was a wreck. Paper strewn across the floor, drawers yanked open, my bookshelf toppled. My safe, a cheap one, I'd bought for the ticket, was pried open, its contents gone, but the ticket was still at Sophie's, hidden in her guest room. I'd moved it after the gas station scare. Still, the violation hit like a punch. Someone had been here, searching for my win. I called the police, my voice shaking as I explained. 2 officers arrived, one taking photos while the other asked questions. "Any enemies, exes, debts?" I shook my head. not ready to accuse my family without proof. Maybe a random break-in, the officer said, but his tone was skeptical. Get better locks. And a camera. After they left, I called Sophie, who insisted I stay with her in Tacoma. Pack a bag, Eliza. You're not safe there. As I threw clothes into a duffel, my phone pinged with an email from a local tabloid, the Seattle Scoop. The subject line made my blood run cold. Seattle woman wins $3.00 M-Lottery exclusive. I opened it, my hands trembling, and there was my name, my photo from the lottery office, and my apartment address. Eliza Harper, 34, a cybersecurity analyst, hit the jackpot last week, sources say, but is she sharing the wealth? The article hinted at family drama, quoting an anonymous source who called me greedy. I knew exactly who it was. I moved to Sophie's that night, her loft a haven of exposed brick and fairy lights. She poured me wine, her face grim as I showed her the article. Clara? She asked. Or your parents? I shrugged, exhausted. Could be any of them, or all of them. Sophie hugged me, her voice fierce. You're not alone, Eliza. We'll figure this out. But as I lay on her pull-out couch, staring at the ceiling, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. The next morning, I woke to a flood of notifications, texts from coworkers, emails from strangers, even a voicemail from a charity asking for a donation. The tabloid had gone viral, my face plastered across Seattle's gossip sites. At Sophie's urging, I hired a private security consultant, a gruff ex-cop named Mike, who installed cameras and gave me a panic button for my keychain. You're a target now, he said bluntly. Stay low, trust no one. His words were still ringing in my ears when I stopped at a coffee shop for a latte, needing a moment of normalcy. I was at the counter, waiting for my order, when a man in a leather jacket approached. He was in his 40s, with a slick smile and eyes that didn't blink enough. Eliza Harper? He asked, his voice low. I stiffened, nodding slightly. I represent some investors who backed your sister's brand. She owes them, big time. They're hoping you'll settle her debts, given your good fortune. My mouth went dry. I don't know what you're talking about, I said, stepping back. He leaned closer, his smile tightening. Let's keep this friendly, Ms. Harper. Pay up, or things could get messy. The barista called my name, breaking the tension, and I grabbed my coffee, bolting for the door. He didn't follow, but his words lingered like a threat. I called Mike, who ran a background check on Clara's investors. Shady types, he reported later. Loan sharks mostly. Your sister's in deep. I wasn't surprised, but the encounter shook me. Was Clara desperate enough to sick these guys on me? Or was this another of her manipulations, a way to scare me into paying? The questions gnawed at me, but I had no answers, only a growing sense that my family was capable of anything. By the end of the week, I was a wreck, jumping at shadows and checking my locks obsessively. The lottery funds were still processing, but the drama was already consuming me. Then, on Friday, I made a mistake. I needed to grab some files from my apartment for a work project, assuming it'd be safe in broad daylight. Sophie was at a client meeting, so I went alone, parking in my usual spot and scanning the lot for anything suspicious. The new locks gleamed on my door, a small comfort as I stepped inside. The air felt wrong, heavy, with a faint metallic smell. Voices drifted from the living room, low, urgent. My blood turned to ice. I recognized them, Mom, Dad, and Clara. I crept closer, phone in hand, and peered around the corner. There they were, standing by my coffee table, a small fire crackling in a metal trash can I kept in the kitchen. Mom held a piece of paper over the flames, her face grim, while Dad watched, arms crossed. Clara stood nearby, clutching a takeout bag, her eyes darting nervously. If you won't share, you won't get a dime, Dad said, his voice cold as steel. I realized what they were burning, the ceremonial check from the lottery office, the one I'd left on my counter for safekeeping. My knees buckled, but I forced myself to step forward. "What the hell are you doing?" I shouted, my voice echoing in the small space. They spun around, Mom dropping the paper into the fire where it curled into ash. Clara gasped, the bag slipping from her hands. "Eliza, we were just—" Mom started, but I cut her off. "You broke into my apartment to burn my lottery check? Are you insane?" Dad's face hardened. "We're doing what's necessary. You're tearing this family apart with your greed." I stared at them, disbelief warring with rage. "How did you even get in?" I demanded. Mom looked away, but Dad answered, unapologetic. "You gave us a spare key when you moved in, never asked for it back." The betrayal was a physical ache, but as I watched the flames die down, a strange calm settled over me. I started to laugh, a sharp, bitter sound that made them flinch. "What's so funny?" Mom snapped. I wiped tears from my eyes, still chuckling. "You idiots. That's not the real check. It's a prop, for photos. The money's already being wired to my account. You just committed a crime for nothing." Their faces collapsed. Mom's mouth open, Dad's eyes wide, Clara's hands trembling. I pulled out my phone, opening an email from the Lottery Commission confirming the transfer, and shoved it toward them. "See? You can't touch it." The silence was deafening, their plan crumbling like the ash in the can. Clara stammered, "I didn't know they'd do this, Eliza. I just brought lunch." But her presence, her nervous glances, told a different story. "Get out," I said, my voice steady despite the adrenaline. "Now! Or I call the police for breaking and entering." Mom reached for me, her voice pleading. "Eliza, we were just trying to—" "To what?" I interrupted. "Ruin my life because I won't bankroll Clara's failures? Get out!" Dad grabbed Mom's arm, his face a mask of defeat, and they shuffled toward the door. Clara lingered, tears streaming down her face. "You're being so cruel," she whispered. I held the door open, unmoved. "Cruel is breaking into my home to destroy my future. Leave." They left, the door clicking shut behind them. I sank to the floor, my legs giving out, and called Sophie. "They burnt the check," I said, my voice hollow. "My own family." She was there in an hour, wrapping me in a hug as I recounted every detail. "They're unhinged," she said, pouring us wine. "But you're stronger than them, Eliza. You've got this." I wanted to believe her, but as I looked around my violated apartment, I knew this wasn't over, not by a long shot. That night, I packed a bag and moved to Sophie's permanently, my apartment no longer a sanctuary. The tabloid article had sparked a wave of harassment. Strangers banging on my door, emails demanding handouts, even a creepy guy who followed me to the grocery store. I hired Mike's firm to monitor my accounts and installed a full security system at Sophie's loft. But the real threat wasn't strangers, it was my family, and the lengths they'd go to claim what wasn't theirs. As I lay on Sophie's couch, the city lights flickering through the window, I thought about the ticket still hidden in her guest room. $3 million. A dream come true, but also a nightmare I couldn't wake from. Who had leaked my win to the tabloid? Why was Clara so desperate, and what was she hiding? And most chillingly, what would my parents do next? I didn't have answers, but I had something else. Resolve. This was my money, my life, and I'd fight to protect it, no matter the cost. The rain hadn't stopped in days, a relentless Seattle downpour that turned the city into a maze of slick streets and blurred lights. I was holed up in Sophie's Tacoma loft, my life packed into 3 duffel bags, the lottery ticket still hidden in her guest room like a ticking bomb. $3 million, $1,800,000, 0 cents after taxes, was supposed to be my salvation. A golden ticket out of debt and into a future I could control. Instead, it had unleashed a nightmare. My family, Mom, Dad, Clara, had broken into my apartment, burned what they thought was my lottery check, and left me reeling from their betrayal. I could still see Mom's grim satisfaction as the flames curled, Dad's cold stare, Clara's trembling hands clutching that damn takeout bag. They thought they could force me to share. They thought wrong. But the violation lingered, a splinter under my skin. My apartment, once a cramped but safe haven, was now a crime scene, its new locks useless against a spare key I'd given Mom years ago. I couldn't go back, not after the tabloid leak that plastered my name and address across Seattle's gossip sites. Strangers knocked on my door at midnight, emailed threats, followed me in grocery stores, and then there was that man at the coffee shop, the one with the slick smile who claimed to represent Clara's investors. His words, "Pay up or things could get messy," echoed every time I closed my eyes. Was he a loan shark, a con man, or something worse, tied to my family's desperation? I didn't know, but I was done being a target. Sophie's loft was my sanctuary, all exposed brick and mismatched furniture, fairy lights casting a warm glow against the storm outside. She'd poured us wine last night, toasting my survival with a fierce grin. "To boundaries, Eliza, and to telling your family to shove it." I'd laughed, but the weight of it all. $1,800,000, 0 cents, a broken family, a city that suddenly felt hostile, kept me awake, staring at the ceiling as rain drummed the window. Today I had to act. The money was coming, and I needed to protect it. Protect myself before my family's next move. Because there would be a next move. I could feel it, like a storm gathering on the horizon. Morning broke, gray and heavy, the kind of Seattle day that made you question why anyone lived here. I sat at Sophie's kitchen counter, nursing black coffee, my laptop open to an email from the Lottery Commission. Funds transfer in progress. Expected deposit, December 1st, 2025. 2 days away. $1,800,000, 0 cents, wired to a secure account at Puget Sound Bank, accessible only with my biometric ID. The bank manager, a brisk woman named Ms. Patel, had called yesterday to confirm the setup. "We've handled lottery winners before," she'd said, her voice calm but firm. "Your account has our highest security protocols: fingerprint, facial recognition, in-person verification. No one gets in without you." I'd thanked her, but the relief was fleeting. Money in the bank didn't stop my family from breaking into my home, or Clara's investors from circling like sharks. My first call was to Mark Reynolds, an attorney recommended by my financial advisor, Laura Bennett. His office was in Bellevue, a sleek glass tower that screamed money, a stark contrast to my thrift store coat and scuffed boots. Mark was in his 40s, with a salt and pepper beard and eyes that missed nothing. I told him everything. The lottery win, the Thanksgiving disaster, the apartment break-in, the tabloid leak, the coffee shop threat. He listened, jotting notes, his expression darkening with every detail. "Your family's actions constitute breaking and entering, destruction of property and harassment," he said, setting down his pen. "The burn check was a prop, but their intent was to sabotage your financial security. That's criminal." "I don't want to press charges," I said, my voice small. "Not yet. I just want them to stop." Mark nodded, but his jaw tightened. "Understood, but we need to act. I recommend a restraining order against your parents and sister. It'll keep them 500 feet away and bar contact, calls, texts, showing up at your work. We'll also document everything, voicemails, texts, the break-in report. If they escalate, we'll have a paper trail." I swallowed, the word restraining order heavy in my throat. It felt like severing a limb, but what choice did I have? They'd crossed a line, and I wasn't safe. "Do it," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Mark drafted the paperwork, promising to file it by tomorrow. "One more thing," he added, sliding a card across his desk. "Hire private security. You're a target now, not just from family, Lottery winners attract trouble. I thought of the man at the gas station, the one who'd grabbed from my purse, and the vandalized car with "share or else" carved into the paint. He was right. I needed protection. Back at Sophie's, I called Mike, the ex-cop security consultant I'd hired after the tabloid leak. He arrived in an hour, his pickup truck rumbling outside the loft. Mike was built like a linebacker, his buzz-cut and no-nonsense demeanor reassuring in a way I hadn't expected. "Your apartment's a liability," he said, inspecting Sophie's locks. "I'm installing cameras here. Motion sensors, night vision, cloud backup, and you're getting a full security package. Panic button, 24/7 monitoring, a team on call if anything goes south." I nodded, handing over my credit card, though the cost made me wince. "What about my family?" I asked. He frowned, scratching his jaw. "Restraining order's a start, but desperate people don't always follow rules. Stay vigilant, and don't go back to your old place alone." That night, I barely slept, jumping at every creak in the loft. Sophie tried to lighten the mood, ordering pizza and cracking jokes about my millionaire problems, but I could see the worry in her eyes. She'd been my rock since college, the one who'd celebrated my small wins and held me through breakups and layoffs. Now, she was risking her own safety by letting me crash here. "You sure you're okay with this?" I asked, gesturing to the chaos I'd brought into her life. She grinned, tossing a pizza crust at me. "Your family, Eliza? The good kind. We've got this." But the next morning, the stakes skyrocketed. I was driving to a coffee shop in Tacoma, needing a change of scenery, when an unmarked black SUV appeared in my rearview mirror. It tailed me through 3 turns, too close for comfort, its tinted windows hiding the driver. My pulse raced as I sped up, weaving through traffic on Pacific Avenue. The SUV matched my pace, then surged forward, swerving into my lane. I slammed on the brakes, tires screeching as it missed my bumper by inches. Horns blared, but the SUV gunned it, disappearing around a corner. I pulled into a gas station, hands shaking so badly I could barely hold my phone. Was it random? A road rage lunatic? Or someone connected to Clara's investors? I called Mike, who promised to check traffic cams, but his tone was grim. "Get somewhere safe, Eliza, now." I drove straight to Sophie's, my paranoia in overdrive. The coffee shop incident, the car vandalism, the break-in, it was all connected. I was sure of it. But how? And who was pulling the strings? Clara's tearful denial at my apartment didn't add up. Not with her $50,000 0-cents debt and those shady investors. And then there was the tabloid leak. Someone had fed the Seattle Scoop my details, and I couldn't shake the feeling it was an inside job. Mom? Dad? Clara? Or someone else entirely, lurking in the shadows of my win? The lottery funds hit my account the next day, December 1st, 2025. I was at Sophie's, staring at my bank app as the balance updated, $1,800,427.63. It was real, undeniable, a number that should have brought joy but instead felt like a target painted on my back. I called Ms. Patel at the bank, confirming the biometric locks were active. "You're secure," she assured me. "No one can touch this without your fingerprint and face scan." I thanked her, then logged into my email, finding a new message from the Lottery Commission. "Funds transferred successfully. Please contact us if you experience any issues. For your safety, we will not disclose your win to third parties." The words were meant to reassure, but they only deepened my unease. Someone already knew. Too many someones. I needed a new home, somewhere my family couldn't find me. With Laura's help, I'd found a gated condo in Bellevue, a modern 2-bedroom with a 24-hour concierge and keycard elevators. It was pricey, but the security was worth every penny. I signed the lease that afternoon, keeping the address secret from everyone but Sophie and Mike. The move was a whirlwind, packing my few belongings, hiring movers, saying goodbye to my violated apartment. As I swept the studio one last time, I found something odd. A small USB drive tucked behind my bookshelf, its silver casing scratched. I hadn't seen it before, hadn't owned one like it. My stomach twisted. Had it been planted during the break-in? Was it Clara's? Dad's? Or someone else's entirely? I slipped it into my pocket, too rattled to investigate alone. That evening, settled in the Bellevue condo, I plugged the USB into my laptop, my antivirus software on high alert. It was encrypted, a password prompt blocking access. The file names were gibberish, random strings of letters and numbers, but one stood out. Harper_deal_doc_X. My last name. My hands went cold. Was this evidence of Clara's debts? A plan to sabotage me? Or something worse, tied to the SUV that nearly ran me off the road? I called Mike, who advised against cracking it myself. Could be malware, or worse, he said. I'll get a forensic tech to analyze it. Until then, lock it in your safe. I did. But the USB's existence gnawed at me, a puzzle piece in a game I didn't understand. The next morning, I woke to a nightmare. My work email was flooded with hundreds of messages, most from unknown senders. Greedy bitch, share the money. You'll pay for hoarding that cash. Watch your back, Harper. My heart sank as I scrolled, realizing what had happened. Clara had posted a viral Instagram reel, a tearful monologue about her heartless sister who'd won millions but refused to help her family. She didn't name me, but the tabloid had, and now online trolls had doxed me. My work email, my company bio, even my LinkedIn profile splashed across X and Reddit. The threats were graphic, relentless, some including photos of my apartment building. I felt exposed, hunted. I called Priya, my boss, my voice shaking as I explained. I need to take leave, I said. The harassment, it's out of control. Priya was sympathetic but firm. Eliza, I'm sorry, but this is disrupting the team. We'll support you, but you need to resolve this quickly. I hung up, tears stinging my eyes. My job, the one thing I'd clung to through the chaos, was slipping away. I forwarded the worst threats to Mark, who added them to the restraining order file. This strengthens our case, he said. The judge will see the pattern of harassment. But justice felt distant, a faint hope against the immediate terror of being targeted. That afternoon, I met Laura to finalize my financial plan. We sat in her office, the Puget Sound a stormy gray beyond the windows. First, your student loans, she said, pulling up a spreadsheet. $85,000, 0 cents high interest. Pay them off now. I nodded, logging into my bank app. The transfer was surreal. $85,427, 0 cents. Gone in a click. My debt erased. I cried, not just from relief, but from the weight of a decade lifted. Laura smiled, her eyes kind. You're doing this right, Eliza. Next, we'll set up an emergency fund. 6 months' expenses, about $30,000, 0 cents. Then investments, index funds, real estate, a small business if you want. I told her about my dream, a cybersecurity startup, using my skills to protect others from digital threats. She nodded, jotting notes. Smart. We'll allocate $200,000, 0 cents for seed funding. But keep your family out of this. They're a liability. Her words hit hard. A liability. My family, the people who'd raised me, who'd cheered at my high school graduation, were now a danger. I thought of Aunt Margaret, Mom's sister, a retired judge who'd called last night after hearing about the break-in. Eliza, I'm horrified, she'd said, her voice steady but laced with anger. Your parents crossed a line. I've known Deanne my whole life, and she's always been dramatic, but this, it's criminal. You have my support, whatever you need." Her words were a lifeline, a reminder that not all family was lost. But the rest, Mom, Dad, Clara, were a storm I had to weather alone. The restraining order was filed the next day, a temporary measure pending a court hearing in 2 weeks. Mark warned me it might not stop them entirely. "Desperate people take risks," he said. "Stay alert." His words proved prophetic. That evening, I attended a charity gala in Seattle, a last-minute decision to support a women's tech scholarship I'd funded anonymously with $50,000, 0 cents. The event was at the Chihuly Garden and Glass, all glittering sculptures and champagne flutes, a world away from my diner days. I wore a simple black dress, my hair pulled back, hoping to blend in. But I didn't. Halfway through the night, a man approached me near the bar, his suit tailored but his smile too sharp. "Eliza Harper," he said, not a question. "I work for some folks who know your sister. Clara says you're good for her debts. I'm here to make sure you follow through." My stomach dropped. I glanced around, spotting security guards nearby. "I don't owe anyone anything," I said, my voice low. He stepped closer, his breath sour with whiskey. "You don't get it, do you? People like us don't ask twice." Before I could respond, a guard intervened, escorting him out, but not before he hissed, "This isn't over." I left the gala early, my hands shaking as I called Mike. "Another investor," I told him. "Clara's in deeper than we thought." Mike's team dug into Clara's finances, uncovering a bombshell, a $20,000 0-cent deposit in her account, made days after the break-in, from an offshore company called Triton Holdings. No one knew who owned it, but the timing was too convenient. Was it a payoff? A loan? Or something tied to the USB drive? The questions piled up, each one a thread in a web I couldn't untangle. And then there was Dad. Aunt Margaret called with disturbing news. "Richard's been meeting with a lawyer, Victor Crane. He's got a reputation for fraud cases, shady stuff. Be careful, Eliza. I don't know what he's planning, but it's not good." The pieces were falling into place, but not fast enough. Clara's debts, Dad's lawyer, the USB drive, the SUV, the tabloid leak. It was a conspiracy, and I was at its center. I needed answers, but every step forward felt like walking into a trap. Then, a new clue surfaced. Margaret sent me a package, a small leather journal she'd found in Mom's old belongings. "It's Diane's diary from 20 years ago," she explained. "I haven't read it, but there's something about your family's past. Debts, deals, secrets. It might explain why they're so desperate now." I opened it that night, my hands trembling. The entries were cryptic, mentioning loans we can't repay and promises to keep quiet. One name appeared repeatedly. Triton, the same company behind Clara's deposit. My blood ran cold. What had my parents done, and how was it tied to me? The tension built to a breaking point a week later. I'd settled into my Bellevue condo, its sleek lines and floor-to-ceiling windows, a stark contrast to my old studio. I'd bought a 2-bedroom townhouse in Kirkland, closing the deal yesterday, a mortgage-free haven I'd move into next month. But safety was an illusion. Mike's team was still analyzing the USB drive, and the restraining order hadn't stopped my family's campaign. Mom's voicemails were now pleading, Dad's threatening, Clara's a mix of both. And the trolls? God, the trolls. They'd found my new work email, flooding it with death threats and doctored photos of me, one with a noose around my neck. I was on indefinite leave from TechWave, my career hanging by a thread. Then came the final confrontation. I needed to grab mail from Sophie's loft, where I'd forwarded my bills. Mike offered to go, but I insisted, needing to feel in control. It was a mistake. As I unlocked the loft, I heard voices inside, familiar, chilling. "Mom, Dad, Clara." My heart pounded, but anger overrode fear. I burst in, finding them in the living room, a metal trash can blazing with papers. Mom held another sheet, ready to burn, while Dad stood guard, his face a mask of determination. Clara clutched a phone, filming the scene, her eyes wide with panic. "Self!" I shouted, lunging for the can. Mom dropped the paper, flames catching it instantly. "Eliza, you forced us to do this," Dad said, his voice icy. "You won't share, so you get nothing." I stared at the fire, realizing they were burning another prop check, one I'd left at Sophie's for safekeeping. The absurdity hit me, and I laughed, a wild, unstoppable sound. "You're pathetic," I said, tears streaming down my face. "That's a fake, just like the last one. The money's in my account, wired days ago. You can't touch it." Mom gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Dad's face twisted, shock giving way to rage. Clara dropped her phone, the screen cracking on the floor. "You're lying," Dad growled, but I pulled out my phone, showing the bank app with its $1,800,000 0 cents balance. "It's done," I said, my voice steady. "You broke in, again, for nothing." Clara stammered, "I didn't know, Eliza, I just came to talk." But her filming, her presence, betrayed her. She was complicit, always had been. "Get out," I said, my voice a blade. "Or I call the police, and this time I press charges." Mom reached for me sobbing. "We're your family, Eliza. We made a mistake. A mistake!" I snapped. "You've been extorting me, harassing me, breaking into my homes. You're not family. You're predators." Dad grabbed Mom's arm, pulling her toward the door. Clara lingered, tears streaming down her face. "I'm sorry," she whispered, but I shook my head. "Save it, lead." They left, the loft silent except for the crackle of dying flames. I called Mike, who arrived with a team to secure the scene. "This is enough for felony charges," he said, photographing the can. "Say the word and we'll nail 'em." I hesitated, the weight of it crushing me. They were my family, but they'd chosen greed over love. "File the report," I said finally, "but hold off on arrests. I need time." The next day, I met a therapist, Dr. Karen Walsh, recommended by Laura. Her office was a cozy nook in Capitol Hill, all soft blues and bookshelves. I poured out everything, the win, the betrayal, the fear, the guilt. "You're grieving," she said gently, "not just your family, but the idea of who you thought they were. Setting boundaries doesn't mean you don't love them. It means you love yourself." Her words were a balm, easing the ache in my chest. I wasn't the villain Clara's posts made me out to be. I was a survivor, claiming my right to exist. That evening, Sophie threw a champagne party at the loft, just the two of us. We toasted on her balcony, the Tacoma skyline glittering below. "To you, Eliza," she said, raising her glass, "for standing tall when they tried to break you." I clinked my glass, tears in my eyes. "To true family," I replied. The moment was perfect, a flicker of joy in the chaos. I'd paid off my loans, bought a home, funded a scholarship. I was building a life, not just for me, but for others through my startup and charity work. Then, a breakthrough. Clara emailed me, her tone different, reflective, raw. "I've been a selfish idiot, Eliza. I see it now. My brand's gone, and I'm working as a barista trying to fix my mess. I don't expect forgiveness, but I miss you." I read it 10 times, searching for manipulation but finding none. Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet her at a neutral diner in Renton. She looked different, hair in a messy bun, no makeup, a barista apron peeking from her bag. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice breaking. "Not just for the break-ins, for everything. I leaned on Mom and Dad's favoritism, and it hurt you. I'm trying to change." I listened, guarded but open, and we parted with a tentative hug, a sliver of hope. Mom and Dad were another story. Their emails were half apologies, still laced with excuses. "We were protecting the family," Mom wrote. I didn't reply. Dr. Walsh was right. Reconciliation could wait, maybe forever, but the diary, the USB, Triton Holdings, they hinted at a deeper truth, one I'd uncover in time. For now, I had my life, my choices, my peace. Standing in my Kirkland townhouse a month later, I looked out at the snow-dusted lawn, my startup's business plan on the table. I'd resigned from TechWave, my scholarship was changing lives, and Clara was rebuilding hers, one coffee at a time. The threats had faded, the restraining order holding, Mike's team watching my back. I wasn't just a millionaire, I was free, rich in ways money couldn't buy. Self-respect, boundaries, love from those who mattered. The lottery had exposed my family's flaws, but it had revealed my strength. And that, I knew, was the real jackpot.